Board Member Gonzalez, the stream is running.
Thank you. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting. I call the meeting to order. I want to remind those speaking tonight during the board meeting that we are using closed captioning on YouTube live stream. So please speak as clearly as possible. I also want to flag that we do have an executive session this evening. After tonight's executive session concludes, we will reconvene in person only. No action will be taken. I will read a statement of closure and announce the next meeting and adjourn the meeting, all of which will be noted in the meeting minutes. With that, we'll move to the Pledge of Allegiance, and I ask you to stand if able and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance in English and Spanish.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, with God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad of the United States of America.
We gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose homeland we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. We're now going to move to a moment of silence. I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for those who have given their lives in service to their country, and also to the family and memory of our board member, Ronalda Tomwarito, who recently lost her brother. Thank you. We will move along to the roll call. Ms. King, can we have a roll call, please?
Janelle Astorga,
Here.
Ronalda Tomwarito, Heather Benavides,
Here.
Crystal Tapia Romero, Josefina Dominguez,
Here.
Courtney Jackson,
Here.
Danielle Gonzalez.
Here. The next item on our agenda is agenda item 2.1. Consider adoption of the April 17th, 2024 Board of Education meeting agenda. Is there a motion and a second?
I move to approve adoption of the April 17th, 2024 Board of Education meeting agenda. This is Board Member Jackson.
I'll second. This is Josefina Dominguez.
Thank you. We have a motion from Member Jackson and a second from Member Dominguez. Ms. King, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Secretary Astorga,
Yes.
Member Benavides,
Yes.
Member Dominguez,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
President Gonzalez.
Yes. The next item on our agenda is agenda item 3.1. Consider approval of the minutes from the Board of Education meeting on April 3rd, 2024. Before we vote on that, I'd like to make sure that the motion for approval includes an edit of the minutes to reflect a reordering of items 6.3 and 6.4 on the agenda. May I have a motion and a second, please?
I move to approve the minutes from the Board of Education meeting on April 3rd, 2024 with the amendments as noted.
I'll second. This is Heather.
Thank you. I have a motion from Member Jackson and a second from Member Benavides. Ms. King, can we have a roll call? Vote.
Secretary Astorga,
Yes.
Member Benavides,
Yes.
Member Dominguez,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
President Gonzalez.
Yes. Next on our agenda is public forum. Member Jackson, will you please share the instructions for public forum?
Happily. Welcome to our public forum guests. When you signed up to speak, you were asked to review the rules and expectations which our presiding officer will enforce. The New Mexico Open Meetings Act requires that our agendas specify in advance the items that will be discussed and voted on during the meeting. Therefore, public forum is not a dialogue among speakers and board members, but rather a chance to hear from our community. We will call participants to speak in the order they signed up, whether in person or virtual. Those of you here with us tonight will be asked to come to the microphone at the back of the room when your name is called. Online guests will stay in a virtual waiting room until it is your time to speak. We have set aside 45 minutes for public forum. Tonight, there are 7 speakers, so you will each have 2 minutes to speak. Once your time is up, we'll be asked to quickly wrap up. If you feel you were unable to convey your message, please email boarded@aps.edu. And in addition, for those of you who are with us tonight, a representative from our service center is here to assist you. And she's right there. Thank you. All right, Mr. Gonzalez, will you please introduce our guests?
Thank you, Board Member Jackson. And we do have 9. We had a couple sign up late.
9, I
Yes,
apologize.
ma'am. Just wanted to let you know. Our first one is on Zoom. It is Leon Garcia.
Yes.
Mr. Garcia, when you begin speaking, you'll have 2 minutes.
Madam President and School Board, thank you for hearing me. HB1 is a contradiction. According to hrc.org, the trans message emphasizes identity as if you are standing on the idea that kids should be able to be as they feel. Then by its very nature, transgenderism in HB1 is a contradiction to its own stance. A child changes year to year, month to month, even day to day. Why are you then not allowing these children to grow into a fully grown individual to make such a decision? Instead, you trap them in the funnel of this trans idea, forcing it on the present, knowing full well ideas change, feelings change, bodies change, and every part of childhood changes when entering adulthood and reason. You all are smart enough to know without a doubt this fact, and if not, and HB1 is the end all, then isn't it appropriate to call everyone here a child without offense? One of the last places in the brain to mature, the prefrontal cortex, is thought of as the personality center, and it's the cortical region that makes us uniquely human. According to Google, it is where we process moment-to-moment input from our surroundings, compare them to input to past experiences, and then react to them. Are you saying kids have such a rich past on which they can base their identity on? HB1 and the transing of our kids is a hijack of the undeveloped prefrontal cortex and a very contradiction to the be as you feel message transgenderism touts. Let children be children, the beautiful, unique in every way, innocent humans, and only innocent ones left in the world. Do I really need to be here telling a bunch of full-grown adults the truth you already know but are unwilling to enforce? You know full well what you are doing, and if so, and you go deaf to these words, may your school board seat last forever, because at this rate, innocence will not.
Thank you.
Thank
Our
you.
next speaker is in person. That is Dr. Sinello. Dr. Sinello? Yes, sir. You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Well, happy spring, Madam President and school board members. My name is Dr. Geraldo Sinello, alternative health doctor and minister. The APS school board members should greatly emphasize the necessity to advance educational lifestyle of reading, writing, and arithmetic, not sexual lifestyle of perversion, mutilation, and castration. Do you ever wonder why New Mexico is still dead last in education and top 3 in crimes and suicide for many years? The North Carolina pastor, Reverend John Amanchukwu, sounded the alarm on a sexually explicit book available to children on the Asheville City School Board of Education for making the controversial book depicting various sexual acts available in school libraries. And I quote, "If you don't want to hear it in a school board meeting, why should children be able to check it out of the school system?" End quote. "We have perverts that are perverting our kids," he quoted, "and you all sit back, smug in your chairs, and celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion, but you want me to read it so you can hear it?" End quote. So Amanchuk would call it Perfectly Normal, the book, described as a sexual health guide for families, hardcore porn that glorifies masturbation while speaking against religion during the Fox and Friends news. And I quote, "This book is used as a tool to create what I call mental rape in the hearts and minds of children." Amanchuk would told the co-host, Todd Piro. "We are robbing our kids of their innocence in America as we allow diversity, inclusion, and equity to dominate our schools. And so many of our librarians are bringing this kind of material into the public school system because they believe that children need to see themselves on the shelf. And I quote, "Don't believe that this is perfectly normal. I believe that this is perfectly perverted and it needs to stop," he continued. Regardless, he reiterated the notion that controversial sexual-related topics should be off limits in the classroom and all be addressed at home between parent and child. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Christy Damar. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Good evening. My name is Christy Damar. I am a 4th and 5th grade dual language teacher at Montezuma Elementary School, the chair of our instructional council, and our school's bilingual coordinator. Recently, changes have been made to our school without community input or thought to how these changes might impact our school community. We believe that these decisions are contradictory to the goals and guardrails of APS, namely Goal 3, Guardrail 1, Guardrail 4, and Guardrail 5, as well as the Yazzie Martinez decision and the Bilingual Multicultural Education Act of 1973. First, we believe our dual language program is being threatened. Over the past year, our program has grown significantly, and in many grade levels, the dual language class is larger than the non-dual counterparts. Because of this, we made a decision as a school to fund 6 dual language teachers and create 2 combos in our non-dual classes. This was a difficult decision as it meant saying goodbye to 2 really incredible non-dual teachers. However, the district rejected this school decision. The district does not recognize our dual language students as unique with distinct needs. They group the dual language students with the non-dual language students, and even though the bilingual students must receive instruction from a bilingual certified teacher. However, we were told that the dual language program could not be counted separately, and thus the solution would be to create combination classes at every level from kinder to 5th grade. This is an incredible disservice to our bilingual students and has the potential to severely harm our dual language program, which in turn will negatively impact our community as a whole. In addition, the changes to the bell schedule that were recently released were made without any input from our community and kind of came out of the blue, and the district seemed to kind of downplay the impact that it would have on our community. So we were not asked for any input on these changes, and we hope to be able to find a solution to these issues that will best serve our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Laura Gonzalez. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Good evening. My name is Laura Gonzalez. I'm a physical education teacher at Los Baileyes Elementary, also a dual language school. You might recall last time my colleague Michael Anderson spoke on the subject of PE at the last meeting. I recall many smiles as he was reading his speech. And so afterwards, when we convened outside, we went outside to debrief afterwards, and all of us agreed. We were very impressed with the board and in your desire to seek out professional development, to I think the words were streamline your meetings, make them the most efficient you can, just to be the best that you can. And we admired that because that is something we are always seeking. And then it occurred to us that maybe the board is not aware of our situation. So I thought I'd briefly discuss it. As of now, currently, PE teachers do not have anybody above them. We don't have any resource teacher above us. We don't have any leadership in our specialty. So PD is almost non-existent for us. Oftentimes PE teachers are required to sit in on the classroom teacher PDs that focus around math and literacy. It's different for fine arts, music and art. They do receive their own PDs. So we are really lone wolves out there. So 7 of us got together to take care of that, to act upon it ourselves. And we've been meeting virtually, in person. We talk about best practices, best routines and procedures, how to support children through social emotional learning. We share equipment. We are constantly driving around, dropping off equipment between us because that's what we want to do. We want to be the best that we could be in our school. So we just wanted to make you aware of that, and you'll be seeing more of us. And when you find out all that we've accomplished, we are confident you're going to be very impressed. But right now I feel like I'm at the Academy Awards and I have to hurry up. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. Until next time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is on Zoom, Melissa Waller. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Melissa Waller. I'm the mom of a wonderful and hardworking fourth grader at North Star Elementary School, and I'm also a proud 20-year-plus veteran teacher at APS. I teach third grade at the same school my daughter attends. I'm here this evening to make a considerate request of the APS School Board, our APS School District leadership, and other teachers and parents who may share the same concern I'm about to address: New Mexico State testing administration dates. Why are our students being asked to take and our teachers being asked to stop core instruction to administer our mandated New Mexico measures of student success and achievement summative assessments so early? March and April and even early May have never seemed to me to be appropriate times to gather final proficiency ability levels for our students when their core ELA and core math programs have not been completed. There are still gaps in learning. There are standards the students have not been introduced to, fully learned, and have had the chance to become proficient in, most especially in math. My grade level team works extremely hard before our school year even begins to take our core ELA program benchmark and our core math program iReady to pace each unit according to our APS school district calendar. Following these programs' fidelity is always our goal to help our students learn what is required so they can be best prepared for the next grade level. When we start these programs, the week school begins, and they do not conclude until mid-May. This is when all grade level Common Core skills and concepts can officially be successfully covered. Why are we testing students before they know all they will be tested on? I understand the state testing windows are set by the New Mexico Public Education Department. My question is, why are we not lobbying the PED harder to move the test window to the end of the school year so that all students have their best shot at knowing all there was to learn? We are setting our students up to fail parts of these exams when instruction is stopped to test end-of-year skills a month and a half early. This has never made any sense. My request is, can school district leadership, school board members, and our community advocate harder for the PED to divert state testing to the end of the year when students can truly be assessed with proper and true validity? Gathering end-of-year ELA and math proficiency levels a month and a half before school ends makes absolutely no sense. It never has. Yet we will be judged on those proficiency levels when the state releases these scores. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is in person, Stuart Ingham. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Thank you. My name's Stuart Ingham. My comments are relating to charter school authorizing and support. I was unable to retrieve the current budget numbers, so I'm going to have to go on memory. I know that charter schools surrender 2% of their SEG funds to provide for APS authorizing. I would love to know the amount of that contribution and how it relates to the budgeted support for charter schools. My memory from previous years is there was a line item labeled services available to charter schools for $500,000. This seems nebulous and needs to be itemized, and I would like to know if charter schools are informed of these services and how they can access them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Gail Stewart. I have her coming in the room on Zoom. Gail, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking then.
Thank you. Sorry for the delay. My name's Gail Stewart. I'm a special education lawyer in New Mexico, and I signed up tonight to speak about the link between reading disability and math proficiency that I've observed over a couple decades. So I'm concerned in looking at the questions and answers the board was posing to the district about math proficiency and the target goal. And I'm not seeing anything in there about how reading disability impacts the ability to learn math. It's possible I missed it. I looked at it quickly. But here's what I've seen over the years. When kids are presented with word problems and they cannot read well, it's assumed they do not understand the math. Yet parents tell me frequently, my child actually does know how to do the math. They can't do the word problems. They continually get scored down. And then that's compounded in later years when math instruction becomes more complex and there is written text that is relied on by teaching staff to present concepts. And again, students who can't read well are not getting the full presentation of those concepts. And it really leads to continual lag of math skills. The way to address this most simply, obviously, is the reading, but easier than that to start with is ensuring that there's audio access to all math assignments. I cannot tell you how difficult it continues to be across the state and in APS to get audio access to math books. And the result is kids are losing out on math instruction, and they're showing a low performance that is artificial and is based on reading problems rather than lack of math understanding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is in the room, Mary Ingham. You have 2 minutes once you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good evening, Superintendent, Madam President, and school board members, and all the rest of all folks. My comments are concerning the decrease in students in the APS system. I have a few ideas. One would be focus on the core subjects until we have at least 50% competency and dispense with others. I think that may be a reason that a lot of the students are leaving APS. Number two, as student numbers decrease, it becomes necessary to recruit teachers from the administrative staff as mentor or regular classroom teachers. This will help with the teacher shortage and will keep valuable skilled administrative staff on payroll. Number three, consolidate schools and allow charter schools to utilize the extra schools. And number four, I'm not sure if this is being done, but to do a survey of students and families who've left or are planning to leave APS to discover why that may be happening. And thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. And our last speaker is Irene Haran. You have 2 minutes, ma'am, once you begin speaking.
Okay. I'm Irene Heron, and I was here 2.5 years ago. I'm sure you don't remember me, but I'm here for the same reason. I had seen on the news last night that you're closing certain schools after school and on weekends. I'm here to ask you again to close Marie Hughes Elementary School in the evenings and on weekends. We sit 50 feet from the baseball field, and the baseballs have started coming over again. And it's very difficult for us. We're afraid we're going to get killed by one of these baseballs coming over. And, you know, there's nothing we can do. So, you know, can Marie Hughes be part of this list that closes on weekends and on after school? So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Board. Thank you, ma'am. Here you can. President Gonzalez, that completes public forum.
Thank you. Thank you to our public forum guests and for everything that you have shared. And again, a reminder, this is not a two-way conversation, but an opportunity for us to hear directly from the public. But I know our superintendent and staff are taking notes, and hopefully we can resolve some of the concerns that you may have. The next item on our agenda is agenda item 5, which is all about student outcomes focused governance. Yay! I highlighted a couple weeks ago that we had a big student outcomes focused meeting coming up. This is it. So I hope y'all are as hyped as I am. We have several different components of SOFG on the agenda that we're going to be working through. We're going to be starting with agenda item 5.1, which is consideration of acceptance of the modified progress monitoring report for goal 2, interim goals 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3, which are related to math proficiency. Now, we did have a very robust monitoring conversation when we did address goal 2. We also received a lot of follow-up information that has all been publicly posted. We had an opportunity to submit questions and to submit follow-up questions, and also to get a whole slew of exciting new graphs and information related to Goal 2. I believe because we have all of this information and because we already had such a robust conversation and we're only missing the supporting documents, that we can move to accept the proposal without additional discussion or questions. However, I would just like to check with the rest of the board if you all in agreement for that. And if so, we can move ahead to a motion and to a motion in a second.
I'm comfortable with a motion. Okay, I move to accept the modified progress monitoring report for Goal 2, interim goals 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3, math proficiency. This is Courtney.
I'll second. This is Josefina.
Thank you. We have a motion from Member Jackson and a second from Member Dominguez. Ms. King, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Secretary Astorga,
Yes.
Member Benavides,
Yes.
Member Dominguez,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
President Gonzalez.
Yes. The next item is agenda item 5.2, consider acceptance of progress monitoring reports for Goal 3, interim goals 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3 related to post-secondary readiness. Now, as I flagged in our last meeting as well, we are trying a new approach here where we are rotating facilitation of our progress monitoring conversations. So I'm really excited to hand over the facilitation role to Member Jackson. I just wanted to also say that there has been a lot of work behind the scenes, both with the administration, but also with the board and board services to begin to develop a process and a protocol for how we, again, streamline these progress monitoring conversations and how we make expectations clearer. So Member Jackson and I and our SOFG coach, as well as board services, have worked on what we're calling a facilitation guide. And so I'm really excited that Member Jackson is so well prepared to lead this conversation and that I get to just participate. But I do want to also say, and I'll share at the end of the meeting as well, that we do want feedback. We want feedback from board members, we want feedback from the administration, and feedback from anyone who wants to give it about this change. But with that, I will turn it over to Member Jackson to facilitate this part of the discussion.
Thank you, Board Member Gonzalez. And I will just start off. I do have a little bit of a flutter, so I'm just a little nervous. So just so you guys know, like, I'm as nervous as you are. But yes, we have put in a lot of work into this facilitator guide, and I really do hope that this kind of streamlines the information that we're requesting and helps the public to understand kind of what the role of our progress monitoring is. So I am going to jump straight into the progress monitoring session. And just to highlight that tonight, we are going to be monitoring Goal 3 and interim goals 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3, which is measuring post-secondary success. Now, one thing that is a little bit out of step, just because this process is being developed, what will be happening from this point forward is that the facilitator will have already met with the administration to review the progress monitoring report to check for 4 elements that are required within that report. Next time, we will not go over what these 4 elements are, but for the sake of us being a little bit out of step, I am going to review those 4 elements just to make sure that the public understands what it was that we were looking for in this progress monitoring report. So there are, like I said, 4 elements. The first element relates to the goal. And the questions that we asked as it related to the goal was, does it clearly show the specific goal and interim goals that are being monitored? And 2, is there a separate report for each interim goal being monitored? The answer that I had to that question was yes. The second element is the data. Does it clearly show data for the 3 previous reporting periods, preferably on a line graph? 2, is the graph that visualizes the current status clear? Is it properly labeled? And does it describe results that are specific to the data sets monitored in the goals and the interim goal language? And then 3rd, Does it clearly show the target reporting periods? For example, does it show the annual goal targets? Now, most of that is the answer is yes, but we do not currently have the annual goal targets, but guess what? That's coming up later on in the agenda. So we're going to give some grace on that, and going from this step going forward, we will have annual goals. The next element is the interpretation. Does it clearly show the superintendent's understanding of system performance relative to the goal? My answer was yes. And then the fourth element is the evidence and the plan. And board members, this is something that I think is really critical for us to understand. When I met with Dr. Gonzalez to review this facilitator's guide, it was really helpful because they are, you and Acting Superintendent Blakely, you guys are receiving information, coaching information from Council of Great City Schools, as are we. And so for us to be able to have this conversation, it really helped to put into this guide what you guys need and what we're looking for. So I want to highlight two things in here. The first is, does it clearly show supporting documentation that evidences the superintendent's understanding of system performance? These two next things relate to our progress monitoring report that I want to highlight. If the superintendent's understanding of system performance indicates implementation is not on track, has the administration identified the root cause? So board members, you will notice in interim goal 3.1, systemic root cause is highlighted because 3.1 is currently deemed not on track. The third question is, if the superintendent's understanding of system performance indicates implementation is on track, has the administration identified strategic responses, including rationale and any next steps? So board members, you'll notice that the progress monitoring report for 3.2 and 3.3 just has strategic response, rationale, and next steps. So I just thought that was important for us board members to realize that those reports are slightly different to our benefit and to yours. So thank you for doing that. So my answer to all of those four questions was that the monitoring report had what we needed, and I wanted to thank Dr. Gonzalez for meeting with me on somewhat short notice to review that. I believe that all of the criteria for an effective report has been met, but I'll open the floor for anyone else who thinks we may be missing one of the elements. Does anyone have evidence to suggest otherwise? No? Okay, so I'm going to move forward. Since everyone agrees that the required elements are present, we will turn the floor to the superintendent for the presentation.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. This evening, as you see in front of you, we will be progress monitoring goal 3. And as was mentioned earlier, the team has done a lot of work on really operationalizing the progress monitoring reports so that it really becomes part of their daily work and driving the work of the schools. And I think you'll see that evident in Mr. Garcia's presentation tonight. And we also took a lot of time with the team. We had actually the Council of Great City Schools, AJ Crabble came and met individually with us as a leadership team. And we were coached through a lot of this goal 3 and just getting better and better at being able to use the monitoring reports as a communication tool so that there aren't unclear answers that come out in the presentation, but not in the report. So we're really trying to work as a team is making sure that the monitoring reports really identify what the daily work is in the schools and with the leaders of these goals in the work that then comes into the progress monitoring report. So often there's like, oh, we need to do the progress monitoring report, but they didn't realize all of these things they'd been doing along the way to demonstrate it in this report. So I think you'll see hopefully tonight a lot of the work that our high schools are doing under the leadership of Mr. Garcia and some honest conversations about some of the goals you'll see too where we're off track and plans in place to get us back on track. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to the team for the presentation, which will be led by Mr. Garcia, who is the Associate Superintendent to lead Goal 3.
Thank you. Board President, members of the board, Dr. Blakey. I first want to start out with a moment of gratitude and a space for gratitude. And I first want to start with thanking and having gratitude for all of our students and families who have chosen Albuquerque Public Schools and who are also committed to college and career readiness. I also want to thank all of our staff at school sites. I can't list them all, but teachers, EAs, the list goes on, and I don't want to start naming those folks because I might miss a group, but I want them to know that they're seen, they're appreciated, and we value every single one of them. I also want to create space and gratitude for our school administrators who have also locked arms with us in our advancement towards reaching our student outcomes that we've have set forth for ourselves. And I want to thank my Goal 3 leadership team, which includes various departments in Albuquerque Public Schools. They work right alongside me in looking at data, in looking at root causes, systemic root causes, finding critical actions that will align towards improving student outcomes. And I want to also extend gratitude and space for you all in providing us this journey 2 years ago. And in my leadership journey, having the privilege of being in community meetings and hearing the values of the community, and you all actually creating goals that has set us on this path of student outcomes focused governance. And I want you to know through my leadership development and this experience, the profound thing that has impacted me most is that student outcomes will not change until adult behavior changes. And me specifically, student outcomes won't change unless my leadership changes. I take my position very serious. I'm passionate about this work. And I'm committed to relentlessly looking at data. If there's a gap in the data, what are we going to do to improve what's in that gap? Also, I need some water. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, we've got some up here.
Oh, he
He's got this.
He had it. He just had to go get it.
I'll take.
I went from excitement to nervousness, so it made my mouth dry, but
Too nervous.
I truly, yeah, I truly am excited. And through this excitement and through my leadership journey and the space I'm in today, this mindset in learning about student outcomes focused governance and this mindset of agency, belonging, and connectedness. And in these meetings, we get to speak about data. And we also want that to cascade to schools. So me as the instructional leader of Goal 3, having a data dialogue with our Board of Education, I can go into a school confidently and have that same data dialogue with schools and also have conversations about root causes and next steps. So I think I'm ready for the presentation and excited to share with you all that we've been doing. So in looking at Goal 3, post-secondary readiness is the percentage of high school graduates who earn credit in 2 or more advanced placement, IB, or dual credit course, or earn an industry certification or bilingual SIL will increase from 39.6% in September of 23 to 49.6% in September of 2028. Interim goal 3.1, dropout rate. The percentage of high school students who drop out will decrease from 4.2% in May of 23 to 3.2% in May of 2026. Interim goal 3.1, we mark this as off track because this is an area where we're not meeting where we should be at this time, hence why we put it off track, and you'll hear some more information about what we're going to do about that. So our interpretation of the data, the dropout rate for the first semester of 23-24 is slightly higher than it was at the same time last year, 1.8 compared to 1.5%. Also, at this rate, the annual dropout rate would be 5.2% compared to 4.2% last year. So what are those systemic root causes? Why are we seeing the data where it's at? So what we've identified is obviously an increase in semester one dropout rate, but also in looking at data and specifically our habits and mindset data. According to the survey, 44% of our ninth grade students feel slightly or not at all connected to an adult on their campus. This was a huge red flag, a call to action for us. Also, inconsistent transitions from middle school to high school, lack of multiple pathways and opportunities for students to recover credit. So what are we going to do in response to this? Our next level of work, support ninth grade students and their families in that transition to high school. Initiate early interventions for students at risk of dropping out based on looking at data of attendance, behavior, and course performance. But now we're also adding agency, belonging, and connectedness. Focus on quality instruction, curriculum alignment, career pathways, and systems of support. Case management approach, ensuring on-time graduation. Interventions for the right student at the right time. Finding ways to engage students, developing district-wide credit recovery strategy. Interim goal 3.2, course enrollment. The percentage of high school students enrolled in advanced placement, IB, dual credit, second-year higher language courses, or career pathway concentrator course will increase from 48.3% in May of 23 to 54.3% in May of 26. And in this interim goal, we put ourselves as on track. And here is our interpretation of the data. 48.4% of high school students were enrolled in an identified course in fall of 2023, compared to 46.7% at this time last year, and 45.7% in fall of 2021, an increase of 2.7 percentage points in 2 years. First semester enrollment rates are at the highest since 2021. The second semester enrollment percentages for 23-24 is projected to exceed the 22-23 rate by 1.7 percentage points. So what have we identified as what's going well? Improving student engagement, aligned curriculum, creating career pathways, and strengthening our student success systems, expanding work-based learning, dual credit and internships, updating our course catalogs so that students can continue to choose their programs of study that align to their post-secondary goals, and also having 1/3 of our 10th grade students identified as having AP potential. So what's our next level of work? Continue to roll out scope and sequence and lesson plans for advisory, develop a graduate profile based on the new graduation requirements of House Bill 171, create a framework for 8th grade next step plans to guide course and pathway selections, develop process to get AP potential students actually in the seats of AP classes, apply for grants and staffing to support staffing and resources, and most importantly, work to ensure equitable access for these courses. Moving on to interim goal 3.3. And what I want to mention is that we look at 3.3 much different than 3.2. So 3.2 is course enrollment, just getting the students in the course. But we know that getting them in the course is not enough. Are they actually earning credit in that course? So interim 3.3 is the percentage of 11th grade students who earn credit in at least one advanced placement, IB, dual credit, third-year higher language course, or a career pathway completed course will increase from 58% in May of 23 to 64% in May of 26. And also on this goal, for interim goal, we are also marked it as on track. And our interpretation of the data, 57.4% of 11th grade students earn credit in at least one of the identified courses in fall of 23 compared to 55.9% at this time last year and 54.3% in fall of 22, an increase of 3.1 percentage points in 2 years. More than 5,100 11th grade students earned credits in these identified courses, 122 more credits than in fall of 2022. And based on the trends, we are projected that the percentage of juniors earning credit in spring semester will be at 59.5%, higher than it was and higher than it's been since 2022. So what's going well for interim 3.2? Nearly 2/3 of high schools saw increases in credit attainment. Work continues to improve engagement, curriculum alignment, strengthening our career pathways, and student success systems. What's our next level of work? Continue to upgrade our study and course offerings and frameworks, bolster student acquisition of grade level skills and content knowledge so they have success in these courses, develop a graduate profile that ensures students continue to take advanced placement, dual credit, distance learning, which will no longer be required because of House Bill 171. Ensure that advisory lessons and next step plans expose students to programs of study and support their post-secondary goals. Also, high schools seeing a drop in credit attainment will conduct a root cause analysis and develop next steps to improving earned credits. That concludes the presentation, and at this time, I open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. It was fantastic. You did a great job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we will now open the floor for our monitoring conversation. As a reminder, we have asked that questions that are of a technical or a tactical nature have come in before tonight's meeting. Those questions and their answers are posted with the agenda materials for the public to see. Our questions during this meeting must help us to understand how the administration's actions align to the board's goals and guardrails. So our questions this evening must also be SMART, meaning they must be strategic, measure-focused, task-oriented, results-driven, and time-bound. And this is where I will pause. We have a handy-dandy new flowchart up here on the dais for the board that helps us to really understand what kind of questions we need to be asking. The other 2 points that I would like to make is that just a reminder that it is imperative that each board member do ask a question. And the reason for that is because it is our job, it's our elected responsibility to be critical of the school system performance, to really make sure that we are on track for our students. And the way that we are critical for our community is to ask smart strategic questions to ascertain whether or not we are on track. And the other thing that I will say is that while I am the facilitator, so I will be making sure that the questions are appropriate and that they are smart, I am not the only one that has that opportunity to jump in to say, gosh, President Gonzalez, that was a technical question, not a strategic question. I'm not saying that you would, but, you know. So I'm not the only one that needs to do that. So we are all kind of holding ourselves accountable to that. But one thing that I will make sure is that if board members do ask a question and they don't quite get the answer, then I'm going to circle back and make sure that the questions that we are asking are being directly answered. So with that, I'm just going to go down the dais and I'll start to my left. So board member Benavides, do you have a question? Oh, and one thing, I think we'll start with 3.1. We'll go through 3.1, then we'll go to 3.2, then we'll go to 3.3. So do you have any questions on 3.1?
It's perfect timing. So thank you so much for that presentation. It was fantastic. And thank you for starting with gratitude. I think that is so important. And there are so many people involved and it's such a huge effort, and to thank them and acknowledge the time and effort they've put into this is really important. So thank you for that. So I'm glad we're starting with 3.1 because that's where my main concern is. I think it's fantastic that we're on track for 3.2 and 3.3, but graduation rates are so important. They're important to me personally, and they're important to the lives of these students. And so I see in the presentation that you focused on interventions mainly at the 9th grade level. And I understand why, having had a conversation with President Gonzalez earlier in the evening. What is the strategy? Just a simple question, what's the strategy to incorporate those interventions for grades 10, 11, and 12? Because I think students are at risk of dropping out at any grade level, but I do understand that it's more critical at the 9th grade level. So thank you.
Board President, Board Member Benavides and Dr. Blakey, thanks for your question. So student success systems and finding the right intervention for the right student at the right time is for all students. And it's not solely for 9th grade, but we gave an example for 9th grade because right now, if you look at dropout trends and you look at the number of students who fail Algebra 1 biology, a core content course their freshman year, data and research shows that those students are the ones that end up dropping out. So we've developed teams to start as a base with 9th grade. I'd like to give an example of Del Norte High School real quick and looking at some of the data that they've had in attendance and credits earned. So at Del Norte High School this year, they're actually teamed up in 9th grade for their core content classes, and those teachers meet regularly to discuss students and to find how they can best support those students. The data this year shows that their 9th grade students' attendance has improved by 30%, and they've also improved students earning credit by close to 20%. So that's just an example of how it can work for 9th grade. But when you look at student success systems, it's looking at data, looking at what students are furthest away from opportunity. And again, when I talked about the right intervention at the right time for the right student, you can look at data for the number of students who failed Algebra 2. And then you can look at the data and also look at focus group students. And if you identify any group of students or student that's struggling, and you provide an intervention for that student, whether it be academic, a student success plan aligned to attendance, or if a student is showing potential issues with behavior, can we involve restorative practices and really, focus on that student? So I guess what I want you to know is that we've taken EWS, which was early warning systems, and through the research of Dr. Belfance and the grad partnership out of Johns Hopkins University, post-pandemic, if you look at the data, what was done with EWS back then, it's not working now. But what we've read in an article I provided for you from Education Weekly is that what they termed in the article, the secret sauce, is the sense of connectedness and belonging first. You can put a book in front of a kid, you can put algebraic problems in front of a student, but if that student doesn't feel a sense of belonging or knowing that there's an adult on that campus that cares about them and is going to champion them, then that book is going to be a lot less relevant. And that's how we've moved our student success systems, looking at habits and skills mindset survey for all grades. I want to thank Dr. Bowman and his staff. They've created a dashboard aligned to habits and skills mindset survey. Right now, I can log in and I can tell you any focus group student and at any school, the district as a whole, where they were at in any of those responses. I can put it down to female, male, any Yazzie Martinez focus group. What that allows us to do, again, provide an intervention at the right time for the right students. But in addition, the reason early warning systems work now post-pandemic, and the research is showing it, is that whole thing of sense of belonging. And now that we've worked with school principals and their student success teams in looking at their data. And if they show low data as a school as a whole, what can they holistically do at that school? If they show data that's low for any one focus group, can they call those students in and have a focus group conversation and hear from those students? What is it that's keeping you from feeling a sense of belonging? How can we create a space for you to feel like you belong to this community? That's the part when I said I was excited, because I'm excited about the examples I can share with you, what's happening in schools. So I hope I answered your question. And if not, when they circle back, I'm happy to talk a little bit more. So I want to warn you, once I get going, it's going to be hard to stop. Just kidding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Benavides, was your question answered?
I think my question was answered. Yes. And you gave a lot of great information. Thank you.
Okay. President Gonzalez, do you have a question?
I do. I want to thank you, Mr. Garcia, also for your presentation and for your enthusiasm and commitment to this work. I have a current performance question related to 3.1, and I think it dovetails nicely off of some of the stuff that you just shared in response to Member Benavides's question around the role of skills, habits, and mindsets as it relates to high school dropout rates, sorry. And so my question related to current performance is, what do we know about which students are struggling most? And by that, I mean which student groups, and what do we know about what are the barriers? So you did share that this lack of a sense of belonging is critical, but I'm curious, what are the barriers that exist to inhibit fostering that sense of belonging? And then also, what do we know about which groups are struggling most?
So in looking at the data,
Go ahead.
some of our students who are showing either not a sense of belonging, agency, or another area is, again, one of the groups that I noticed was English language learners was one of the groups that appeared to be showing needing extra support. What are the barriers in the data? Attendance. If you don't feel like you belong in a space and you have no connection, your attendance begins to decline. And we know that when attendance declines, it's hard to keep up in class. And when you can't keep up in class and you fail a course, it's a spiral. And that's where we as adults, in changing our behaviors, need to intervene early, and support that student and family so that they can be ready for post-secondary success.
Thank you. I think we do hear a lot from community members with concerns about barriers related potentially to housing insecurity, food insecurity, transportation challenges, poverty, that type of thing. And so certainly there are in-school factors that can be controlled by a focus on sense of belonging, but there's also out-of-school factors that contribute to this as well. So are there key out-of-school factors that are popping up as barriers that need to be addressed?
So, Board President Gonzalez, members of the board, Dr. Blakey, I think you hit several of those barriers right off the bat. What I want to acknowledge is that we have community schools framework. And I want to just thank Brian Garcia for his work and also being part of our Goal 3 team. And so in part of EWS, early warning systems, attendance and behavior, we often do behavior squared, and we look at barriers to learning and ensuring that we align any out-of-school barrier, whether it's food insecurity, housing, that we provide resources and connect those families and students with the right resources that they need to support their student for re-engagement in school. So part of student success systems does look at outside of school barriers, and we have many resources in our district. We have the McKinney-Vento program who we connect with, and the list can go on and on.
Great, thank you. I did have a second part to 3.1, if that's okay, or if you want me to wait.
Why don't you pause and then we'll make sure everybody gets a chance and then we'll circle back. Okay. Board Member Dominguez.
You.
Welcome.
Thank you for starting your gratitude at the place where it all happens, and that's the school site staff. I especially appreciate that. And ending with us, because everything, it should be a bottom-up model that we're trying to engender. And thank you for all your hard work. Because my first question was taken, but it was a great conversation or dialogue, I'm going to piggyback off of Board President Gonzalez and her question. What are the plans to address or to use culturally, linguistically relevant strategies, whether curriculum or through the curriculum or through events, to engage families and students, ELL students?
Board Member Dominguez, Board President Gonzalez, Dr. Blakey. So first, using high quality instructional materials that are culturally relevant in the classroom. That's the first thing that we can do is starting in that space. And then also moving it along to family engagement. And when schools plan family engagement activities, are they thinking about all the different persons within the community, and are they represented in family engagement initiatives? Are we printing information that's aligned to the languages spoken in our schools? So I think really starting with curriculum that's culturally relevant, standards aligned, and high quality, ensuring that we think about those students in our schools and that we communicate with all members of the school community, and thinking and being mindful of all persons. Dr. Gonzalez?
Board President Gonzalez, Member Dominguez, Dr. Blakey. To add on to that, another component is, I think it is obvious that the goals are beginning to intersect. The work of the skills, habits, and mindsets with the work, in this case of Goal 3, I think is very evident in the presentation. And in a conversation with one of our other goal leaders just today, I think a good example to illustrate an answer to your question is the idea of being bold and starting some family walks in our schools, community walks in our schools, and really from the family eye, from the community eye, what is working, what is missing in our schools, so that there's that reciprocal cycle of feedback to our schools from other perspectives in relationship to how we are meeting the needs of all students, including our ELL students and any other group of students that we have. So point being, really working to see how we are diverse in the way we receive feedback in the classroom, at the school level, and in relationship from school into the community.
So real quick, I just want to make sure that this is an important discussion, but the high school dropout, which is 3.1, didn't actually reference culturally relevant material. That was more the high quality instruction was more referenced over in course enrollment. So as I'm looking at my little data, I want to make sure that we're not offering recommendations for 3.1, and that we're addressing data that has been specifically provided at the board's request in the report.
So I only bring it up because it came up in the discussion that ELL students were suffering the most. And I think when we talk about ELL, I mean, like you pointed out, Dr. Gonzalez, the goals and the guardrails are going to intersect, especially when we talk about ELL students. And I would say, thank you for the answer. The one piece that's missing to my question is the language piece, right? Linguistically relevant. And I think this has come up in other areas, if we're going to engage families, we've got to address heritage language.
That's a recommendation.
Yes, I
That's a
understand.
recommendation and a suggestion that we can definitely send along later, but we need to stay away from statements, opinions, or recommendations.
Except half of my question was answered.
So did you get your question answered?
Half
of it. Okay.
Yeah, the cultural piece, but yeah, the language piece is coming, I'm sure.
Okay. All right. Board Member Astorga, or sorry, Secretary Astorga, we're coming to you.
Thank you. I appreciate this changing of facilitation throughout the meeting, because I think now that my question is actually partly a suggestion, or a leading suggestion. I'm going to say it anyways, but I would love your guidance. So thank you for the presentation. And my question was around building relationships between staff and students, because I think that that's super important. That's one of the reasons why I, continued my high school career, was because of staff. And I know that that's really important. So my question is your team considering using advisory and similar class sections to increase the relationship building between students and teachers? And if so, what resources or development strategies will you be using? So it kind of sounds leading. I'm not sure how that works.
It is a little bit of a suggestion. Can you state it one more time? And I'll try to help you to restate your question into a smart question.
Is your team considering using advisory and similar class sections to increase the relationship building between students and teachers? And if so, what resources or development strategies will you be using?
So the suggestion that I would say is at the very beginning, when you say, is your team going to use advisory, just take that part out and say, what strategies is your team considering to use?
Okay, okay. So what strategies is hang on, go back. So what resources or development strategies will you be using to increase relationship building between students and teachers while in school?
Great question. Perfect. Thank you. Did you get it, Mr. Garcia?
Board Secretary Astorga, Board President Dr. Blakey. So some of the resources that we're going to be using is the habits and skills mindset. I don't know if that's a resource as much as it is a resource. So in looking at that data specifically, that helps us in building relationships with our students as a starting point for advisory. But advisory, right now, it's one of our areas that we are working on in Goal 3. And again, I talked about it in the presentation in aligning advisory to alignment to House Bill 171. So advisory actually starting in 8th grade and continuing through 12th grade, so that students can align their post-secondary goals with the course selections that they're taking, so that when students identify an interest or a career and they take courses that have relevance for them, that's when students really enjoy school. And we are currently working with Vicki Price in counseling and our college and career readiness counselor, also Tori Stevenson and other members of curriculum and instruction, to provide schools with a scope and sequence for advisory lessons that not only includes social emotional well-being, also includes ways to build relationships with students, but also connecting career connected learning and post-secondary goals through advisory. One last thing I'd like to add is, as we've been learning about habits and skills mindset and resources available, we do have a playbook that has actual interventions for building relationship. And you can actually, as a teacher, you can identify a class that might need support or a group of students, and then you can take a lesson and either do it through advisory and or as a class. So we're really advancing how we're doing the work of advisory, and it is an area that we know is going to pay dividends towards reaching student outcomes for Goal 3.
Secretary Astorga, was your question answered?
It was, and I have a follow-up, if I may, just quickly. Since, yeah, I understand that you're focusing on advisory, which is really great. How are we going to ensure that the entire school climate is getting the same resources?
Board Secretary Astorga, members of the board. So a strategy would be to make sure that we're taking in attendance for these courses and also creating engaging activities that interest students so that they attend. But again, everything we're doing is for all students, and interventions at the right time for the right student is for all students, and advisory is for all students.
Thank you. I think I was referring more to adults, right? Because students are connected to one advisory teacher. So how do we make sure that the entire staff at the school is connecting with students on that same level every day and not becoming clusters? Hopefully that makes sense.
President Gonzalez, Member Astorga, Dr. Blakey, it does. And I think, as was alluded to by Mr. Garcia, as these new advisory lessons are conceptualized and rolled out, they are being done and they're being built cross-department. So you have this cross-pollination of ideas and synergy in terms of how we as a support at the district level are supporting our teachers at the different high schools in this case, to be able to have common resources, common professional development, and ability to execute the work of advisory. By doing that, we will have common language at the district level that will hopefully be able to be translated to our different high schools through our principals, through our resource teachers, our resource counselors, our resource nurses, so that there is a common thread of support that is consistent to every school in the district, not isolated to one school, but that there's a common expectation and common language that can hopefully help facilitate accountability, if you will, in terms of all adults at all schools supporting students in a similar way in alignment to the goal.
And Dr. Segura, I see that your hand is raised. Do you have something to add?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I would like to share that, you know, when we look at whole school, we are also looking at our principals and how they are setting that culture and climate and expectations for the schools and for their school. And so, you know, anytime that they're meeting with their staff, it's promoting the whole child in student wellness. And how are we not just focusing on the instructional aspects, but also just the human aspect of when you're walking down the hall, make contact with a student, say hello, smile, adult to adult. When you're at your door between passing periods, right? Welcoming your students by name, knowing something about them, having team building activities within your classroom so that students know that their teachers care, because our teachers do care, but you know, we've come out of a space in time that has really impacted students and adults in very different ways. And so I think all the work that we're doing with Goal 4 is going to enhance our other goals. But I think it does come down to that leadership. And when our principals have had 2 years of professional learning with Baeza, the University of Washington, and SREB, and they have focused on, you know, relationship building and how to have critical conversations and systems and structures, culture building within their schools. And so now is the time we're looking to transition to really operationalize what that looks like within the school. But I always say the principal is the leading catalyst for change in a school, and teachers will feel that, hear that, and be excited about that. And that will translate to students, because we know that a relationship between a student
and the staff is the #1 indicator of success for that student. So I just wanted to add that piece of the principalship.
Thank you, Dr. Segura. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say thank you all. I feel like the more that we talk about it, the better it will actually become a reality, especially when it's about culture and climate, right? And changing that narrative. We have to continuously just bring it up, and you guys are doing the work, and I really appreciate it. And it's showing that these plans and strategies are making a breakthrough. So I'm just really, really happy and ready to see the results. So thank you.
If my fellow board members don't mind, I have a question to ask, and then we'll follow up with everybody else. Thankfully, I submitted mine early to our coach, so I know that this is a smart question. On page 3 of our document for interim goal 3.1, under strategic priority 1, clear expectations, it says you will develop a district-wide approach to support incoming 9th graders and their families as they transition to high school. What plans do you already have, and how do you think those plans will resonate with families to bring about your desired outcome?
Board Member Jackson, Board President, and Dr. Blakey, thank you for the question. So we are calling this initiative Operation Jumpstart. So really taking what we've traditionally done with just Jumpstart Day, like one single day in isolation for a 9th grade student is not enough. And that's not enough for families either. I want to give an example of West Mesa High School, who this year, as an example of taking Jumpstart to the next level, they actually had all of their incoming freshmen come during March to tour the school. But it wasn't just come look at the auto body mechanic shop. It wasn't just look at the cafeteria. They actually had a assigned staff. They had student ambassadors who could talk to students and ensure when that 8th grade student showed up on campus that they at least knew one student, an upperclassman, when they showed up. And also when that student reports to campus in the fall, that they can recognize adults on that campus. Another thing that they did in these rotations is they had their counselors in the pack. And what counselors did was explain all of the courses that were available to students, and also how credits work in high school and what a transcript means and all of those things. So I just wanted to give one example of what we're calling Operation Jumpstart, really expanding this transition. So really communicating clearly and having a set of expectations of what schools will do to provide a warm, welcoming space for students, but then also have expectations around that. So in Operation Jumpstart, also looking at student data. So when those students are coming from 8th grade to high school, where are they academically in math and ELA? And are they actually in the right course? And do we need to provide an academic intervention on the day they show up? Not at the end of the 9 weeks when they've already failed the course. You got to intervene early and progress monitor. In addition to that, creating family events before school starts, several of them, to create that communication. And then last, one thing I'd like to expand on is taking our habits and skills mindset survey and identifying those 8th grade students that did not feel a sense of belonging in their middle school, doing something before school starts with those students specifically to create a different starting point than maybe they left 8th grade. So those are a couple examples of what we plan on doing strategically to improve the transition from 8th grade to 9th grade.
Okay, thank you. So if I can clarify, I love the narratives, but I just want to get very pointed about some of the plans that you have. It sounds like are you attempting to operationalize what happened at like West Mesa, for example? So it sounds like visits early to the school, family events, using the data of the 8th graders, and surveying the students early? That's part of the plans that you guys already have in place?
So Board Member Jackson, Board President, Dr. Blakey. So really identifying signature experiences in the spring before the student comes, identifying signature experiences, family engagement during the summer, and then also in the fall when students get to school. We want to provide autonomy to our schools, and we want schools to be able to be authentic to their community. So it wouldn't be us top down telling the school what they're going to do, but rather having some expectations of like some key points in time that there's something has to be done, but providing schools autonomy and the space and including their teachers and students in these conversations as well. So really like a tights and loose, like, you know, in this time, you'll have a signature experience. What that looks like would be determined by the school community.
Thank you. That answers my question. I appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to go back through to see if there are any follow-ups for 3.1. Board Member Benavides.
No, but the Operation Jumpstart sounds incredible, and thank you for doing that.
President Gonzalez.
Yes. So the first part of my question related to current performance for 3.1 is what do we know about which students are struggling most? So the second part is what do we know about what is working? And you've spoken to a couple examples, but I think in particular, I'm curious about outlier data. If you have any data around specific student groups, specific schools, specific educators who are outperforming the norm or otherwise as it relates to some of these factors that you're related to. But what do we know about what is working?
So Board President Gonzalez, members of the board, Dr. Blakey, in looking at the data, what I know about an outlier, when you look at Rio Grande High School compared to their statistical peers and the number of students who are earning credit, they're actually, and in alignment to 3.1, they're actually performing better right now than some of their statistical peers. And in talking with the principal about what could be happening, they actually developed a compelling scoreboard at their school. And when they started in progress monitoring, they were monitoring the number of students who failed a course. And through working with students and collectively as a staff, identifying their wildly important goal, they identified that if they change the narrative from the number of students failing to actually the number of students passing, it created a whole different mindset amongst students and staff. And in talking with the Principal Valenzuela, she specifically mentioned that specifically as one of the ways that they're seeing 3.1 data improving, and they are an outlier right now compared to their statistical peers.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay. All right. Board Member Dominguez.
I'm trying to decide here. Oh, darn. Okay, so this has to be about
3.1.
3.2, right?
No, we're on 3.1. I'm just doing one more round of 3.1.
Yay. All right. So for 3.1, there was a question 4. But I'm curious about a follow-up in your answer, which appears on page 6 of the question, the answers. You say, we encourage students to try different activities and consider their future careers. We keep families informed through meetings and various forms of communication. And here's what I'm interested in. We always check to see if our plan works and how we can improve it. What have you, how do you check to see if the plan works? And what have you learned and what have you improved?
Board Member Dominguez, members of the board, I think right now with what we're doing with board progress monitoring and even looking at our interim goals and our data set in our first progress monitoring cycle and our data set now, like we are doing that in this space right now, but also all of our continuous improvement processes at schools, our 90-day plans are aligned to looking at data and identifying root causes and then next steps in alignment to that data. So I think it's pretty broad in the way that we do continuous improvement in the continuous improvement process.
So it sounds like, and I don't want to misinterpret, it sounds like we're laying the groundwork then for, district-wide for these systems of, I mean, I guess I'm still not clear. And it doesn't mean that we have to get the answer. We always check to see if our plan works and how we can improve it. It just seems the answer was very global. And
Board Member Dominguez, I think I can help. I think specifically the document you're looking at is a question, a technical and tactical question that was provided before this board meeting. And I remember the question specifically, and it was in alignment to that transition from 8th grade to 9th grade. And at the very end of that paragraph, it states that we will look at what we did, find out what worked and what didn't, and then, what will we do next? That's just an example of really being mindful of everything that we do. We have to see the success of it and then adjust. If it's not working, then we need to discontinue those things that are not working. If it is working, then how do we elevate that and be able to identify other schools who can benefit from that strategy? So I think it was just a statement of like, it's continuous. We do everything in this mindset of continuous improvement.
so if I may clarify then, I think what I'm referencing is, do you have specific metrics or data? Are you collecting this? And does it have some form yet?
Board Member Dominguez, members of the board, thank you. That really helps me out. So that's an example, and even Dr. Gonzalez talked about it earlier. When we work with families, are we creating space to get their feedback? Are we conducting surveys for students and families after an event is completed, if it worked well for them, and or what suggestions do they have to improve what we've done? I hope that's helpful.
I think
it's developing.
Board President, Board Member Dominguez, the other part that I think, and it's not specific to this question, but in what Mr. Garcia is saying about everything that we're doing to try to align to the work of the goals operationally, is connected to our 90-day plan. And in the progress monitoring report, I believe it talks about how these initiatives are incorporated into the 90-day plan for the individual schools. And the reason that that's so important is because that embeds a continuous improvement for that school to look at what their key initiatives that they're doing. And every 90 days, they have to revisit how it's going and then make improvements or take things off, move things in at the school level. So the more that we can operationalize our goals into the school's 90-day plan, that gives them kind of the tight and loose that Mr. Garcia was talking about, as far as this is what we're trying to accomplish. How Del Norte does it could look different than how Valley does it, but the ultimate goal is the same in how they look at their 90-day plan to make sure that it is a cycle. The 90-day plan in itself is a cycle of continuous improvement. And we've been doing it very sporadically. Some schools grasp on, some more than others, but now I think the team has seen how it can actually be utilized to tie all of this work together in the school, looking at their data, because essentially what we're doing as a district in doing the progress monitoring is our own 90-day plans. So the more that we can have the school's 90-day plan mirror the progress monitoring, then we can, at a systems level, see the difference in the student achievement levels, because we're all on the same monitoring of how we're doing. And not, I think in the past, there's been a history of just like the next shiny object that you want to try. Oh, let's try this, but let's try this. But now there's actually like a cycle of, let's look at what we're doing. Is it working? It's not. Don't reach for the shiny object unless you need a shiny object because what you're doing isn't working. Instead of just doing it because of we heard this might work. It's becoming much more embedded in the practice.
Okay, yeah.
And if I may, I think that this also, what you just highlighted, is actually embedded in our reports as well. You might need to reach for that shiny object if something is off track, right? And that is exactly why we are doing that's why they do the root analysis if something is off track. It's to say, this isn't correct, we're not going where we need to do. And that's where the adjustment happens. And that's why we have the root cause. But in these other two, in 3.2 and 3.3, we're on track, things are working. And so how do we continue to stay in that continuous loop of progress? So if that also highlights, okay. Did you have anything else?
No.
Okay. Board Member Astorga, do you have another question for 3.1?
I do, and it might have been answered during the presentation and I might have missed it, but under the root causes of 3.1, it says that we only have one method for students to recover credits, which does not meet the diverse learning needs of all of our high school students. So my question is, what other methods are we looking to implement, and when can we see this change?
Board Member Astorga, members of the board, thank you for that question. So in looking at our data and talking with schools, we've identified that our current credit recovery options that we have for students is not allowing students to earn credit as much as we'd like. And we're looking at creating a task force in the fall, including the union, to look at how we can enhance credit recovery, looking at real-time credit recovery, and really rolling out holistically different options of credit recovery so that we can reach students. Some students right now don't do well, for example, online credit recovery. So what can we do during the school year to provide alternative options? So we are looking at that systemically.
Thank you. And is there a timeline that you all have on when you might have other methods?
Our timeline is to begin rolling this out spring of 25 and really having a different looking credit recovery summer school in summer 25.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions for 3.1, or we can move to 3.2? Okay, we're going to move to 3.2, and I'm going to change it up a little, and I'm going to go back over to Board Member Astorga, and you get to ask the first question.
Thank you. I actually do not have any questions for 3.2, so I'll pass it back to you.
Back to me, okay. Board Member Dominguez. I would encourage you, Board Member Astorga, to maybe one will come to you as we're, okay.
So I'm going to reference, my question references the answer to question number 4 under 3.2. And that question was, each year The data indicates a decrease in enrollment for second semester. To what do you attribute this decrease and how do you plan to address it? And so in your answer, you mentioned the student success plan. So how does this student success plan work specifically to mitigate dropping the dropping of rigorous classes, especially among our minority, the kids who are not participating, which are mostly the Martinez and Yazzie and populations and African Americans.
Board Member Dominguez, members of the board, Dr. Blakey. So we've done a root cause analysis of why we see the number of students enrolled in courses decline from semester 1 to semester 2. And there's a couple of things that we've identified is that students who are academically in some courses maybe not prepared at the beginning of that course and begin to just on the onset of the course, that semester 1, they're not seeing the success or the grade or that they would like. So at semester, they have that option to either remain in that course or they could level down to another course at that time. And the concept of providing academic interventions to the right students at the right time, really identifying those students early on in the semester and ensuring that they have either tutoring, a student success plan specific to that course. So those are some of the things that we've talked about. And I'm going to pass it to Dr. Gonzalez.
President Gonzalez, Member Dominguez, Dr. Blakey. The question is a good one, and I think it is an area that we do need to improve on, but I would like to point out an inherent celebration to this in that in APS, we foster a culture where we allow space and opportunity for students to try, to enroll in, to give it a shot, to give their best at it. And sometimes it works. And sometimes through supports, through wraparound services, through tutoring, through teacher-student relationship, we see more and more students taking these classes that are pointed out to us for focus in 3.2. Sometimes it doesn't. The key here, I think, is, are we keeping track? And if a student gives it a shot and comes up short and maybe goes from an AP class to a regular English class, for example, how are we keeping track through counseling, through the grade level administrator, through the teacher that's receiving the student, to be able to see what is the next plan for the following year or even the next semester, so that we are able to really keep track of that student, support them, see how we're able to build up those skills so that they are able to then take another shot at this pathway, at this AP class, at this industry certification, or what have you, then the following semester or the following year. So I just want to point out that although it may seem like the enrollment from semester to semester may decrease or what have you, I think it's also something to celebrate that we have an expectation, a space, an opportunity for our students to enroll and try, and that we have supports for them regardless of how they achieve in that given class.
Yes, answer your question.
Yes, I just forgot to leave something out.
We'll come back. We'll come back. President Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you. I have a question, a current performance question related to strategic priority 3, engaged students, where you talk about the next step plans. And so my question is, what do we know about the efficacy of the next step plans? Because I see embedded in this answer is either an assumption or analysis that there's something not working right now with the next step plans. And so my question really current performance related is, what do we know about the efficacy of those? And that sort of process.
Board President Gonzalez, members of the board, Dr. Blakey. What we know right now, with just being honest with you, is that it's a document. But is it an actual document that a student's excited about looking at because it's aligned to that student's post-secondary goals? Is that document exciting for the parent to look at because they can see their student's progress and also have a conversation with their student about, wow, you're planning to do this, and I can see how this plan actually is going to support you when you leave high school. I mean, really making it relevant. Something I'm excited about and I'm hopeful is that House Bill 171, the state is looking at requiring next step plans to happen at 8th grade through high school, and really aligning the conversations we've had strategically, aligning that next step plan in a timely way so that students, when they're choosing their courses, students and families know opportunity knowledge and have that vast knowledge to align their courses that they're going to take, and really allowing the document to be relevant for the student and family.
And President Gonzalez, members of the board, Dr. Blakey, just to add on to that, moving away from just doing it as compliance, which didn't necessarily have a relevant connection to the student, but making it something that is meaningful. The truth is, as a district departmentally, nobody has owned next step plans in a meaningful way to offer the associated support to schools. So departments have come together, to their credit, to be able to see how can we take this as an area that the goal has surfaced as needing attention, to be able to offer consistent, coherent support to schools. So it's basically, my point is, departments have taken note and are working to offer support to schools in support of the Goal 3 team and to the high schools.
Yes, follow-up. Yes. Mr. Garcia, I appreciate you starting with the tagline around student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. And so my follow-up question is, what in terms of future performance, what adult behaviors need to change both at the district and the school level to enable these next step plans to be more meaningful, more relevant, and less compliance oriented?
Board President, members of the board, Dr. Blakey, it starts with my leadership in creating the conditions that will create the space for teachers to be successful in providing dialogue and planning and working with families and next step plans. So it starts with my leadership first and foremost by creating the conditions, but really mindset and a culture of agency. And if one adult on a campus says, oh, the next step plans, those are just, those don't mean anything, that's not a culture of agency. So it starts with me by creating an expectation and myself really explaining and creating the right conditions for this to work.
Great, thank you for that.
Anything else? Okay, Board Member Benavides.
Thank you. So I'm going to be referencing the next level of work for interim goal 3.2. And what's listed there is develop graduate profiles based on new graduation requirements, create framework for 8th grade, next step plans, develop process to get AP potential students enrolled in courses, apply for grants, et cetera. Work to ensure equitable access to course offerings. I've left out rollout, scope, sequence, and lesson plans for fall. I understand lesson plans are important. You can't do anything without that. But of the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, remaining 5, they're all important. Have they been prioritized and I guess by level of importance and what you want to see achieved first?
President Gonzalez, Member Benavides, Dr. Blakey, we are excited about the promise and potential of House Bill 171. It is hot off the press from this most recent legislative session. So we have done a few things to begin this work, which is in its absolute infancy in terms of implementation. This work, this bill takes effect August of 25 for the graduating class of 29. I think I got those years right off the top of my head. But with all of that said, we've done a few things. We have conceptually, through a macro lens, worked with our district and our partners at the Albuquerque Teachers Federation to come up with a joint memo to teachers and to principals on how we are going to begin looking at this together. How are we going to begin looking at new courses, for example, that may ignite the interest of our students and engage them in school, that will ignite the imagination of teachers to be able to perhaps have a renaissance in their excitement for the promise of what lies with the students that they now teach in their classrooms. So license and permission to think big, so to speak. We've also have worked with our curriculum board, which I think is important to highlight as a very critical group that works on some of these very specific technical areas in terms of the curricular frameworks of our schools, the way that we're working with course offerings, how our students are responding for courses, how we're working with our teachers to keep their courses aligned and up to date and meeting the needs of our students. So that work is ongoing. And we have a working group that has been established that will really be working throughout next school year to bring to life this House bill into practicality and practice in Albuquerque Public Schools. So my answer is broad in nature, but as the days and weeks go by, it will become more and more specific.
Thank you.
Anything else, Member Benavides?
No,
No?
thank you, Member
Okay.
Jackson.
Okay. I'll go ahead and ask my question unless Board Member Astorga, do you want me to go ahead? I'll go ahead. Oh, yes, you have one?
I do have one actually.
Okay, go ahead.
throughout the conversation. I wanted to say first, thank you, Mr. Garcia, about just kind of explaining why it's important for everything to start with district, right? And creating that environment. I think that that's super important. And it made this question come into my head is, what additional support are we giving our subgroup students who are taking AP courses? And if we're not, what can we do better in order to keep them enrolled in those courses?
Go ahead. So, Board Member Astorga, we have an airplane trying to land in the boardroom right now, so just give us a second. Oh, they're horses. We have horses. Okay.
Board Member Astorga, members of the board. So really looking at enrollment and our focus group students, or all of our students, and looking at, for example, like AP data and what students are underrepresented. And we did provide a document for you in our technical and tactical responses that had actual strategies from both AP College Board, but also actual schools throughout the country that have found promising practices in these areas. I want to use our special education students as an example. And when we look at AP courses and we look at data, and if it's at a school and we have an underrepresented population, what are we doing as a school to create a sense of belonging for those students in those courses, that they too have the right and belong in those courses? One of the strategies in that document is actually having student ambassadors on campuses working with other students to encourage them to take courses. I think that's one example, but on that document, there's other examples. But I just really appreciate your question, because we really want to include all students in all of these courses. and we want to strategically identify those that are not taking part, do a root cause analysis, create an action plan, look at the data again, and see if our plan worked. But thank you for the question, because it is important to us that we have all students represented in all of our courses.
Thank you. And I wanted to connect this to the climate and culture as well, just because of my personal experience as a student and be told that I shouldn't be in AP courses because of the middle school that I went to, right? So changing those narratives and how we speak to students and populations is super important for them to be able to want to take these classes or feel like they can take these classes. So again, I just appreciate the work that everyone is doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Astorga. And I think with that general statement, you just highlighted the work that we need to do. So thank you for sharing that part. My question is in regards to interim goal 3.2 on page 4 of our monitoring report. Under the strategic priority, responsive and coordinated systems, you say that you will develop a process for career-connected learning, grant writing to support sustainable funding for staffing and resources. My question is, how are you relying on grant funding as a sustainable action to specifically support the goal of course enrollment?
Very excited that you asked this question.
Just asking.
And the reason is the opportunity to talk about our ABC partnership with the city of Albuquerque and Bernalillo County through community schools. Specifically, I don't know if you saw in the media recently, through the Community School Council, Highland High School identified an interest from their students to have auto body offered on their campus. Well, in 2017 or so, they lost their auto mechanic teacher and they haven't been able to, at this point, find someone, but they identified through the community school framework, which is one of the pillars for community schools, is after school time and providing enrichment. So at Highland High School, what they've done through the partnership and grants, working with Mr. B's Auto, they took the old auto space that was no longer being used and they refurbished that area. They actually, through the city of Albuquerque, were able to pay for instructors to come into and teach the course. They also were able to identify a curriculum that students could earn a certification in. And that's one example of grant writing, thinking outside of the box. But our current situation we're in, and in talking to Tori Stevenson, who's part of our Goal 3 team, we have to continue to write grants and look at different ways of staffing for career technical education and other courses. So that's why we specifically put that in there.
And so as a follow-up, is that strategy sustainable to be relying on grants?
Member Jackson, President Gonzalez, Dr. Blakey, I think one of the things that we have learned over the last couple of years is that the opportunity to really lean on the federal grants that are available to this specific area is something that we need to do with intentionality. I really want to highlight the work of our Career Connected Learning Department and the way that they have led us over the last couple of years to grow those funds. So long as they're available at the federal level, for example, I think we have learned over the last couple of years that we can maximize those funds. As a specific example, I will tell you that being able to witness how those funds have matriculated down into our middle schools, to have alignment of career-connected learning programs in our middle schools with pathways, not starting in 9th grade, but starting in 6th grade, has not become the exception, but has begun to be the norm. And that has largely been available through federal funds, federal grants that we have been able to be smart about accessing. And that has been largely due to our Career Connected Learning Director, who has really helped us maximize that opportunity.
Board Member Jackson, I think the other part of this that's important to look at big picture as we develop the budget for the next fiscal year. As we move into these goals, I think these grants should always be to leverage what we are already using. And I say that because right now, it's not used to leverage. We really use it to provide all of the programming for career connected learning. So as we move into our next budget cycle, I guess FY26, I think it's really important for us to look at goal 3 very strategically to how much operational money are we putting towards our goals specifically to goal 3 in career connected learning? And then how do you use the federal grants to enhance that rather than it being the full funding mechanism to achieve this part of goal 3?
Thank you. Anybody else, any other questions on 3.2 or should we move to 3.3? Okay, moving on, 3.3. This has been a very robust, great conversation. Okay, 3.3, and let's see, I'm going to start with Member Dominguez.
I'm not ready. How did that?
You've got to be on your toes when I'm facilitating people.
Democratic method. We're at 3.3. How do I ask this?
Use your chart.
I need time. to
Okay.
figure this
Yeah,
out.
I'll bop that. Okay. President Gonzalez.
Yeah, thank you. So my question related to 3.3, again, is a current performance question. And it's related to industry partnerships that we currently have to foster career pathways and the attainment of credentials. What do we know about what's working and where there are gaps in industry partnerships to improve career pathways?
Board President Gonzalez, members of the board, Dr. Blakey. One barrier, what we notice in challenges and gaps is specifically in working with trade unions and students having to be 18 years old to be able to access some specific internships and stuff like that is a barrier. But I also think staffing some of our CTE courses is also a barrier for us, specifically in manufacturing, such as like, I don't want to call it wood shop because we're, expanding those courses to be more than that, but, welding and all of those other courses, auto mechanics, the real barrier right now is finding instructors in those courses. And in February, we actually had through the SREB, a career technical education review of our district. And on that date in February, we actually invited industry partners for them to look at the results of that report and for them to actually provide us recommendations so that we can align and make our curriculum relevant, but also so that we can identify core academic skills, core soft skills, like what do students need the day they step out of high school, from 1 foot out of high school and 1 foot into the job site? Like, can that be one step and students be ready? So I'd like to talk, more beyond the examples I've given, but right now that's kind of what I have.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And at this point, I think that's a completely sufficient answer. I do want to flag that when we did our community outreach in order to set our goals and guardrails, there was a specific meeting with industry partners. And one of the things that they expressed to us was frustration at how difficult it is to partner with the district. And I think some of the things we heard is, we provide these trainings already for our incoming staff. Why can't we partner with APS to provide these trainings and have our trainers work in their schools? So it sounds like you're addressing those things already, which is great. And I think I'm just really happy that you shared that, because it does give us an opportunity to circle back around, which is what we said we would do with our community partners, and say that we're following up on it. So
Thank you. And something that came to mind that I'd like to highlight recently is, again, any opportunity that we have in partnership, if it's going to improve student outcomes, we're going to have conversations with everybody and anybody to find opportunities. One thing we're working on right now is partnership with C&M in our Wagner facility, which is our current bus depot. There's a diesel mechanic bay and a large space, and we just met with our facilities department and C&M just last week in envisioning and labor unions, envisioning what this can look like, and really leveraging the instructors from C&M to be able to teach in this space for dual enrollment courses for our students, but then also C&M being able to use this space in the evenings so that students can continue their certifications, but then also providing industry partners and trade unions in partnership to be part of this space and utilize it for trainings and so forth.
thank you.
Okay, Member Benavides. Oh, sorry, was there a follow-up? I was hearing whispers. Board Member Benavides. I'm hearing voices. The horses.
You'll hear mine, but this one's tough because I don't know that I have a question. I can ask one. I don't know if it's strategic. It might be technical or tactical, but
Okay, let me get my chart. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm ready. Okay, go.
so, and I just want to say that I was really, really stuck on 3.1 and graduation rates. So, that's why I'm a little unprepared at this point, but, so next level of work for goal 3.3, in the presentation, that summarizes all the information, not the graphs and the data. The first bullet says update program of study course frameworks. And is there a timeline for that? And I know that's probably clarifying, but that's my question. And if you've already,
Bound.
yeah, okay.
Board President Benavides, members of the board. So we started that actually in our first progress monitoring in looking at the data and finding next level of work. So we've already started that work since the last progress monitoring. And I could tell you specifically how many have already been updated. I don't have that exact number and I don't want to give you the wrong number, but we've already done from that progress monitoring to this one, we've already done quite a few, but the work will continue.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I'm actually going to take my prerogative as facilitator and come off of Board Member Benavides. I think at the last meeting asked a question that was really relevant that actually pertains to this one as to 3.3. So on page 3, under strategic priority, rigorous instruction, you say that you will continue collaborating with high schools to guarantee the utilization of high quality instruction materials. I noticed that you use the word guarantee, which is interesting because that was part of what Board Member Benavides's question was last time. So I'm highlighting that you said guarantee, which I'm not going to recommend or put my opinions on that. So my question is this a current performance of guaranteeing the utilization of high quality instructional material? And what metrics do you have to prove that this will increase the successful credit attainment in these courses?
Board Member Jackson, President Gonzalez, Dr. Blakey, there's a lot in that question, and I may need you to repeat it, but I'm going to start answering part of it. What's the matrix to ensure the correlation between the use of high quality instructional materials and credit attainment in these areas? I think one of the things that we recognize is our students' ability to comprehend the content in any content area at a very fundamental level, using their ability to read is going to be very important, especially as they progress in these technical courses that are going to require them to interact deeply with the text. So one of the things that we recognize and have been working on throughout this progress monitoring journey, as you well know, is working to ensure that high quality instructional materials are being used in every classroom, be it district adopted, and if it's not district adopted, following the definition of high quality, and giving the principals the tools they need to have those robust and meaningful, and dare I say, transformative conversations with teachers. So that is something that we have taken to heart. We have taken literally and worked very hard with great intentionality to make sure that that happens. So at a very fundamental level, we believe that a student needs to be able to have the tenets and the ability to function in literacy and numeracy, goal 1 and 2, so that they can achieve as they progress in our system and really interact with the courses, pathways, and opportunities laid out in goal 3. And I feel like I missed one part of your question.
It was the guarantee, the utilization. It was, is this a current action? Are you currently?
This is current and ongoing, and I think will be ongoing throughout the life of this progress monitoring journey. I think we look forward to the opportunity to update the board on Guardrail 3 in August, I think. It's in August, with some of the associated metrics.
Thank you. Ready yet? You want me to come back?
Go on.
Okay, Board Member Astorga, do you have a 3.3 question?
I do, thank you. My question is, what support strategies are we currently using to ensure our undocumented students are given access to work with our industry partners, and what, if any, are the barriers?
Board Secretary Astorga, members of the board. On this question, I don't feel confident that I can answer in a way. I need time to research that. So can I get back to you on that?
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
You're up, girlfriend.
So many questions. I'm trying to fashion this question around culturally and linguistically. I'm really focused on our ELL kids and our bilingual kids. It's a gift. And I know we've done incredible work with expanding the bilingual seal. I mean, now we're having Native American presentations in a variety of languages. That's exciting. And I think it's especially important in industry certification. So what system is in place, or what considerations are happening for collecting data on or figuring out how we collecting data on kids getting industry certification, increasing that, and also increasing bilingual, expanding bilingual programs.
I think specifically to goal 3.2, right? Like what we're on 3.3. So what systems or strategies are currently in place to ensure that the students listed in the goals are
ELL, bilingual, and I would include special ed kids are getting access to industry certification and bilingual seal. I changed the question a little bit.
Yes, well, that would be a goal 3.2 question though, because that's enrollment. I think we're on 3.3, which would be attainment. So I think your question maybe would be more, once those students are enrolled in the AP or the bilingual seal and industry certification courses, what metrics do you have to track that they are attaining the certification or the bilingual seal?
Board Member
both.
Dominguez, members of the board, thanks to Dr. Bowman and the SAPR team and Mr. West, they've created a Goal 3 visualization and dashboard where we can actually look at students in any one of our goals, 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3, and we can look at school data, we can look at focus group data, and again, in that continuous improvement process and cycle and us relentlessly looking at data, we can identify any course of study and narrow the data down to any school and focus group. So that's one of our systems that we do have. And again, our strategy is to look at all of our courses and schools specifically for overall enrollment, in addition to focus group data. But one thing I do want to mention, in meeting with our Goal 3 team in preparation for this meeting, Richard Cisneros, the Executive Director of Cultural and Equity, who oversees our bilingual SIL programming, provided me some data specifically that I'd like to share with you in regards to bilingual SILs. And what the data is telling me is that our bilingual SILs in 22-23, we had 1,392. And starting out in bilingual SILs being awarded, looking back to 2017, back then we had 191 students receive a SIL. And I'd like us to take a moment to thank all of our students and families and all those that have contributed to us going from 191 in 2016-17 to 1,392 in 22-23. And one thing I want to mention is that we're getting close to pre-pandemic numbers right now. So I think that's something for us to celebrate.
Thank you. That's encouraging. And yeah, I mean, I can't say enough great things. I was just at Rio Grande High School. It matters. First language, heritage language development will, we talked about accelerated growth at the last meeting. That's how you get it. It's with that heritage language, a sense of belonging. So that heartens, that makes me very happy.
All right, are there any other 3.3 questions? No. All right, Mr. Garcia, I think you are officially off the hot seat. However, I do just want to, as I close out my first facilitating session, just a couple of things that I would like to remind us all about. So first of all, I want to thank the board members for a very productive conversation. A couple things just that I would like to follow up is, first of all, I want to thank Mr. Garcia. Specifically, I know that this was it's never fun to sit in front of a group and answer a bunch of questions. You did a fantastic job. And I really want to highlight two things that I really appreciated about your presentation. First of all, you were very honest. And that is very heartening to us as board members, and more importantly to the public, that you were honest about the data and you were honest about what you did know and what you did not know and what was working and what was not working. So I really appreciate that honesty with us. The other thing that I want to highlight is 2 times you did refer back to the Q&A document, and you did mention that they were technical and tactical questions that had been answered. And so I do appreciate your depth of knowledge on the questions that we asked and your referral back to them. So Thank you so much. I know you were not alone in this presentation, and I don't mean to, well, I do mean to single you out. You did a great job. So thank you. Everybody adds to this, but thank you for that. And then just for the board members, just some coaching that I'm going to add just as facilitator is to make sure that when we are doing these progress monitoring reports, that we are asking questions from the progress monitoring report and not from the Q&A document. The Q&A document, which you referred to, Mr. Garcia, we have that beforehand. So if there's any follow-up questions that come from the Q&A document, we need to send those in advance or after the meeting. But really, our questions need to be coming from the progress monitoring report that's in front of us. So I think those are just the two things that I wanted to state. And now we must vote on whether or not we will accept this monitoring report. As a point of clarity, we are voting to accept this report as a formal acknowledgement that we had a satisfactory conversation with the superintendent and her team and have a deeper understanding of how the current reality for students lined up with our vision for them. To do that, I'm going to turn it back over to the board president, who will take it from here.
Thank you, Member Jackson. At this point, I will entertain a motion for the acceptance of this monitoring report.
I move to accept this monitoring report.
I'll second. This is Heather.
Thank you. We have a motion from Member Dominguez and a second from Member Benavides. Ms. King, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Secretary Astorga,
Yes.
Member Benavides,
Yes.
Member Dominguez,
Yes.
Member Jackson.
Yes.
President Gonzalez.
Yes. So the motion carries. Thank you to the team for the presentation, but more importantly for your work on this goal. We are still on student outcomes focused governance, which is super exciting. And we are moving to agenda item 5.4, which is considering adoption of annual goal targets. Our presenter for this agenda item is our superintendent, Dr. Gabriela Duran-Blakey, and I will turn the floor to you.
Thank you, Board President Gonzalez and members of the board. This evening, you have in front of you the annual targets that I have set up moving forward for our progress monitoring. And as you all know, each of these will lead up to us accomplishing our goal after the 5-year goal, and also will be used as a measure in my evaluation and the evaluations of my team as we move forward on progress monitoring and the goals. I don't think I need to go into detail on why it's important to have annual targets, but I think you will definitely see a difference in the presentations for progress monitoring as well as the data that you look at, because we'll have a very clear understanding if we're meeting our annual target. And without annual targets, a long-term target is obviously very difficult to see if you're going to make it. So I'm very excited about being able to dig into these and to create them. And I don't want to, read to you each individual one, because I think you had them. I think the importance of understanding how we came up with them was we used a sleep, creep, leap method. And it's really good timing because it's spring, and this is also how you plant seeds. So as you know, really this method is to start at the beginning. You'll see in all of the annual goals, there's a smaller increase because the first year is really putting in the foundation and the work for our little seedling goals to have the right conditions in which they can grow. And so we really are, you'll see in the beginning, we don't have large leaps because we're setting the foundation. Year 2, we also have like the creep, which is we're trying to creep up to, you'll see a little bit of a bigger gain. And this is kind of what you see in looking at data and initiatives and the outcomes of those initiatives over the course of time. I see year 2 as the year that people are saying, like, are we really doing this? So like if we back off a little bit, does that mean that they're going to push us back? And so it's kind of like a little give and take of, are we really going to have this plant grow? And that's why you'll see in year 2 a little bit of an increase, but really you expect to come down a little bit or to be flat because usually in year 2, you'll see it as a time of people wondering, do we still have to do this? So the answer is yes. So we should see it creep along. So that's the creep stage. And then leap is when it's all well established. So now our little seedlings have grown into plants of data. And you will see a larger growth now in our data because it's been operationalized and it's been sustained as initiatives that we are carrying on with. And as we talked about tonight, as you progress monitor, and if you're using it in your 90-day plan, you'll start to see that you're going to see bigger increases of growth because you're checking along the way to see if you need to pull back or push in on the initiatives. So you'll see in goal 1, for example, to get to the 37.3% in 2028, I've established the 1%, and then you'll see it grow from 1%, a little bit larger, and then the biggest leap in the last year. And that's, again, putting in all of the conditions that then meet their targets. And one thing I want to point out is because it's the creep of that second year too, is if we have annual targets that at the end of this year, you see that we have gone over what our target was, we will keep the same target for the next year. And so that I just wanted to reiterate because we won't adjust the targets. We're going to hope that that will help propel us to be able to sustain the growth to move forward. It doesn't mean that we're going to pull back or that we're going to adjust the targets. If we meet them, we'll keep them where they are because the target is to hit where we are in 2028. Now, when we get to 2020, these numbers sound like that's like so long. 2027 sounds to me like an eternity, but it's really around the corner. So 2027, if we get there and we're at, 38%, then in 2027, that could be a time to like start the next 5-year target goals because we're so far ahead of where we thought. So it's not to pull back to shorten our growth. We want to still propel forward, but we really need to look at those final 2 years in what I hope we would already be at the 37.3% by 2027. And when that's the case, we can reestablish what our next 5-year growth would be, if that makes sense. So that's for goal 1. And then you'll see the interim goals. The interim goals are the 3-year goals. So this is a little bit, you'll see these in what we just did, for example. And so these have a shorter growth because it's over 3 years of time. And then for goal 2, for math proficiency, you'll see the same kind of idea. Again, in 2027, if we are above 21%, I think that would be a good time to start pushing ourselves forward to move our goal into a higher level, hoping that we would be above that by that time. And the interim goals will be the way that we'll be able to tell if we're going to make it to that level, of course. And that's the indicator of looking at the interim goals with a correlation to the goal to see if those correlations are matching the growth of the big goal. I want to point out goal 4. I think goal 3, we've talked a lot about tonight. You'll see the goal 3 targets. The only interesting one that we talked about, the one we were off track in interim goal 3.1, remember that's a dropout. So that is decreasing over the course of time instead of increasing with the percent. So I want to point out goal 4. This is a skills, habits, and mindsets. We have adjusted the way that we look at and measure this goal to make it more understandable and easier to track progress, because this goal, remember, is measuring the percent of students who demonstrate the skills of perseverance, self-regulation, self-efficacy, and social awareness as measured by an evidence-based underlying tool. The aligned tool, as we've seen in previous presentation of goal 4, doesn't include these all together. We're measuring them each separate. So we thought that it would be more appropriate in the annual targets to separate them. Now, the part of this, so you'll see perseverance, self-regulation, self-efficacy, and social awareness all separated out as 4 like indicators within goal 4. I want to point out that if we were at the target for 3 of the 4, then we're not meeting the goal. Because even though we're measuring them individually, the idea is that this goal is saying that we're moving up in all 4. So we're measuring them individually, but it takes all 4 to move to the target to say that we are on target for goal 4. And you'll see that in the interim goals then, that we have them split up as well. And then you'll see in the interim goals, annual targets, each of them are split up for the 3-year goals. And this is again divided up for each individual area, but it would take all of them moving forward to be on target. So if we were to, Sal, can you do the next slide? Yeah. So if, for example, on perseverance, we're 54%, and then self-regulation, we are at 65%, then we are off target because again, we're looking at all 4 of them cohesively, but breaking them out for more understanding and to be able to really dig into the levers in which we can increase that for our students. And those are the targets that you will now see in the progress monitoring on the data that we display on the progress monitoring reports. Now you'll see a line that has the yearly target instead of the furthest target.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you for that presentation. And so I just want to remind the board that we do have a responsibility to approve these annual goals and also to make sure that our questions are not providing guidance, suggestions, or recommendations, but also just help us advance our understanding of whether or not, I lost the guidance, but whether or not these annual goals also contribute to the ability of the school district to meet the goals and to achieve the vision and values of the community as it was expressed to us. And so with that, I will open it to questions from the board, again, with the encouragement that we're focusing on clarifying understanding, but also maintaining alignment to the vision and values that we heard from our community. And so with that, I'll just open up the floor to any questions.
Any clarification? You mentioned, where are the numbers, the goals related to the overall? You have perseverance, self-regulation, self-efficacy. These are all divided into their own categories. But we are still trying to, are the targets the overall?
Yes, so the annual targets that you'll see is over the 5 years overall, moving those targets forward. And then on the interim goals, you'll see those broken out by grade level of 5th graders, 8th graders, and 10th graders.
So are the annual goals, they're not here though?
Yes, they are, I can't see what number slide, no, slide 11.
Oh, annual. Oh, but they're still broken up.
Yes.
Okay.
I think if I may jump in, I think your question is like right here, goal 4, we had an, X to Y in 2023 to 2029. You're asking where that went, the overall, the main goal?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just remembering.
That went away.
That one, that's gone.
That's gone. So
Okay.
that's gone and it's now these 4.
Oh, but I
That was
really like
an
that.
average of
Venn,
being all 4, yes, the picture.
I like that Venn diagram that Dr. Bowen came up
Right,
with.
so they're individual.
Okay. Well, that's easier to understand. So thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from the board? No. Great, then I will entertain a motion to approve the annual goals.
I move to adopt the annual goal targets.
I'll second. This is Josefina.
Thank you. We have a motion from Member Jackson and a second from Member Dominguez. Ms. King, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Secretary Astorga?
Yes.
Member Benavides?
Yes.
Member Dominguez,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
President Gonzalez.
Yes. So the motion carries. Thank you, Superintendent Blakey, for the presentation, and again, more importantly, for the work. We look forward to seeing these annual goals show up in our progress monitoring reports, and seeing the progress with them as well. With that, we are going to move to the next agenda, which is agenda item number 6, which is President's Report, with a reminder that you don't get a leave after that, board members, because we have an executive session following that. However, we will not convene again online. We will just convene in person to read the statement of closure, and then to state the next board meeting, and then to adjourn the meeting. So folks in the audience too, you're not going to miss out anything if you go home after the president's report. So I do want to begin by, again, echoing the appreciation from the board for the team, Dr. Blakey, and for Mr. Garcia for the presentation related to Goal 3, and also echo your appreciation, which you began with, for the great work of the folks at the school site level, including the amazing work of our students and families as well. So I want to just echo that appreciation for you, but also for the appreciation that you expressed. And staying on the topic of appreciation, I also just want to express tremendous appreciation to Member Jackson for being the guinea pig, but doing an amazing job of facilitating the first round of our rotating progress monitoring. As mentioned, board members will take turns running the portion of that portion of our meeting, which is the progress monitoring. Next up is Secretary Astorga, who will facilitate the discussion on Guardrail 2 monitoring reports at the May 1st meeting. And then again, a reminder that we're going to go in order. So District 1, 2, 3, 4, or maybe, I can't remember. I think we're skipping District 3 because I've already done it. Anyway, it's in my email, but we will be going in that order. And I also just want to flag that there is a lot more behind the scenes, and Member Jackson spoke to that a little bit in terms of her meeting with Dr. Gonzalez, her review of the questions that were submitted in advance. And all of that was captured in the facilitator guide that we prepared. And so the facilitator, in addition to running the meeting, does have a role prior to the meeting. And we've also included into that facilitator guide a timeline for when you should be doing what relative to when the reports are posted and when our questions are due. So the facilitator has that function. And one of the final things on that facilitation guide is for the facilitator to reflect. And there's some reflection questions on there. And so Member Jackson will be doing that as well. And any reflections that she has around how this worked, how well it worked, what needs to be improved, what can be improved, we'll work to continuously improve and reflect those in the facilitation guide. But again, as I stated at the beginning, if there is feedback from anyone about the progress monitoring process, but particularly this new shift in facilitation, if you could just please share that feedback with board services or with myself. Another really cool change that we had tonight was a little cheat sheet, a couple of cheat sheets. So we do have a flow chart, which we mentioned here, around effective question asking. And so again, I do want to thank Member Jackson for helping us with the flow chart, but also helping us to remember to ask SMART questions, which are strategic, measure-focused, ask-oriented, results-driven, and time-bound. We also have a new resource related to Robert's Rules and what Robert's Rules procedures are needed when, why, and how. So that's also an amazing resource that we have here at the dais. And so again, I want to thank you, Member Jackson, for that work. And also just provide the reminder again about why we're doing all of this, because it is a lot of behind the scenes work. It is a lot of time and effort for the administration, obviously, to prepare these reports, but for board members too, to do our pre-work, to do our reading, to understand the progress monitoring reports, and to come up with questions that are SMART. And the reason we are doing this is because we are committed to improving student outcomes. And the careful review of progress monitoring reports is the way that we as a board will hold this administration accountable for meeting the vision and values of our community. So it's critically important. So yay for student outcomes focused governance. I also wanted to flag that this Friday is the APS Education Foundation annual Gold Bar event, which helps raise dollars for innovative programs in our schools. It's a really cool opportunity. So folks, if you have tickets, look forward to seeing you there. At the gala, guests have an opportunity to learn how community donations and corporate partners have helped thousands of APS students. I look forward to seeing you all there, and also just want to express appreciation as well to the foundation for all that they do on behalf of APS students. In the last President's Report, we did communicate that we will be highlighting what we're hearing in public comment. So among the concerns that we've heard a lot over the course of the last couple of months, a year, honestly, has been about the school bell schedule. And so we did pass these concerns on to the administration. They considered all of that feedback and no doubt much more feedback when they set the bell schedule for the 2024-25 school year. That bell schedule is now public. It was shared with schools this week. It's also on the aps.edu website. And so just want to express appreciation to the administration for listening to the community, for their responsiveness to the community, and also acknowledge, I think all of our phones are blowing up and we're getting lots of emails, and we're not going to be able, the district is not going to be able to please every person all the time. But I think what's most important is the two-way communication, the accepting feedback, the transparency, and always centering students in our decision-making process. So I would encourage folks who have questions and concerns about the bell schedule to continue to share them with your board members, but also more importantly with your school leadership, with the administration, and with the service center if needed. Tonight we heard in public comment feedback about dual language, about professional development for physical education, about state testing dates, about charter school budgets and APS role there, about the link between reading disabilities and math proficiency, and about declining enrollment and the hours of school sites, including with some props, which is kind of cool. So we're hearing that feedback from the community, and we'll be continuing to make sure that the administration is responsive to all of that. So that concludes the President's Report, and our next agenda item is agenda item 7.1, which is consideration of approval for the Board of Education to convene in executive session as authorized by the Public Meetings Act, Section 10-15-1H2, to discuss limited personnel matters regarding the superintendent. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
I move that the Board of Education convenes in an executive session as authorized by the Public Meetings Act, Section 10-15-1H2, to discuss limited personnel matters regarding the superintendent. This is Heather.
I'll second. This is Josefina.
Thank you. We have a motion from Member Benavides and a second from Member Dominguez. Ms. King, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Secretary Estorga,
Yes.
Member Benavides,
Yes.
Member Dominguez,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
President Gonzalez.
Yes. At this point, I'd like to ask all people who are not part of the executive session to please leave the meeting. And we will be stopping the recording and the live streaming. So just give us a moment to do that technical piece while we also keep Member Astorga online.